Aharg matey. Build ye a piratey diorama and present it in person at Salute in the port of London, or we'll keelhaul your paint collection. Landlubber. Okay. And this video is sponsored by Squarespace. A piratey diorama? Well, here goes. I picked up this piece of wood from my dad's wood workshop to use as a plinth. Borrowed some wood veneer while I was there, and of course, goblins. These goblins were not living in my dad's wood workshop, they are from Warhammer. Goblins are of course the most piratey thing in fantasy, and one can't make a pirate diorama without them. I want to make the side of a ship, a wooden hull poking out of the ocean, and that's where the wood veneer comes in. I've never tried this before, but the plan is to try and shape the veneer, cut it into strips, and then build up the planks of the hull with curved wooden strips. I soak the wood in water and start thinking of how best to force it into shape. I figured these straps would do the job. Still not knowing if this would work, I forced the wood into shape, soaked it some more in water, and then left it to dry overnight. Goblins rock, and one of my bad life choices was to not just start a goblin army when I got back into Warhammer, especially now that Games Workshop has retired my Stormcast army without asking me first. So any chance to open boxes of little green skins makes me happy. In my mind, I have a ship full of goblins poking out of portholes and climbing masts, but we shouldn't always trust our minds. They tend to exaggerate and create lots of work for us. Keeping things simple is sometimes a good thing for dioramas, and I'm overruling a lot of the more extreme mental images. Let's just use one goblin. Goblin with a squig on a stick. And now let's check on that veneer.
A weekend has passed. The veneer is dry, and it's time to see if the hobby gods have indeed been smiling upon this project or not. And they have. I wasn't sure if that was going to work, but time to build me a boat.
I used the goblin to get a sense of scale and then proceeded to cutting out strips to use as hull planks. I'm not going for the full ship here, just a cut-out section of this pirate goblin-infested fear of the seas. I scratched the wood strips with a wire brush to create a more visible wood grain. I glue the strips together in an overlapping style, replicating a wooden ship. Not that I know anything about shipbuilding, but on the other hand, do goblins. I also cut out 2 strips of wood as a nice back to the diorama. I'm trying to be a little neat here, as this will go on display, and I don't know how. So maybe the back will be visible too. When this basic structure was done, I continued working on the deck using thinner strips of veneer. This kind of scratch building is rather fun. It's never going to look like a detailed plastic kit or a 3D printed pirate boat, but it's a fun example of what can be done with a free piece of veneer, some wood glue and a bit of patience. One could of course use super glue for this, but white glue or carpenter's glue creates such a strong bond when gluing wood together. And as this piece will have to travel the high seas, or at least over the high seas in a pressurized cabin, I feel better creating something sturdy. Building the rail, to keep the bottles of rum from rolling overboard, was a bit of a mind twister. In the end, I decided to use the ends of toothpicks, as they have this nice little cone shape. Drilling some holes to keep them in place and some more bits of veneer as a rail.
So here's the lovely little hull of a ship on our lovely piratey plinth. And we know there's going to be goblins, but I haven't really talked about the rest of the plan. What's going to be going on in this scene? Now I was thinking... Hey, down here.
Hello?
Yeah, have you ever heard about Squarespace?
Yeah, of course. The sponsors of this video.
Exactly. Let me tell you some more.
Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for creating websites, an intuitive platform that I've been using for some time. Lucky for me, there's no need for expertise. You can choose between carefully curated layouts or start a completely personalized website with the new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. A tailored website to suit your needs, up in no time, optimized for all devices and with optimized SOE tools so you show up more often to more people. For me, Squarespace has been a great tool, starting with a nice template that I can adjust for my specific needs. I've created a website with introductions to my work, with galleries of my miniatures and such. It also hosts my online store. Customizing the shop with print-on-demand t-shirts as well as my own artworks and downloads has worked out well, and with a back end that makes my side of things simple when dealing with deliveries and fulfillment. The checkout and payment options for customers works seamlessly, accepting credit cards, PayPal and Apple Pay, but also pay later options like Afterpay and ClearPay. If you're looking for somewhere to display your art, sell merch, if you have a painting service or sell STLs, start up a website for your own game store or club, check out Squarespace. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/52miniatures to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
Okay, thanks for that, Alex. And thanks for Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now, back to the plan. So there's going to be a goblin pushing a dwarf off of one of these things that you do when you're a pirate. There's a plank sticking out and you push your captives down into the sea with the sharks. Only we're not going to have sharks. I'm thinking some kind of kraken, some kind of, big squid, coming out of the ocean. So yeah, I'm going to have to try and sculpt myself some kind of sea monster, I guess.
I made some simple armatures of steel wire representing kraken limbs, tentacles, if you will, and then mixed me some epoxy putty. I use a mixture of half and half green stuff and milliput. I enjoy the mix of these two putties when trying to sculpt. Something good to have handy is hand disinfectant. You know, the stuff we all used religiously during the pandemic. If you get sticky putty on your fingers, it cleans off nicely with hand disinfectant, because of the alcohol. Sculpting little worms is rather simple, a good place to start trying to sculpt. I use a little water on the tools to prevent things from sticking to each other. When all the limbs are in place, I roll tiny little balls of putty. When poking my rather pointy sculpting tool into the ball, it flexes out and a sort of suction cup is created that I can place on a tentacle. As you can imagine, I had to make quite a few of these. But when in place, everything is looking suitably squid-like. While the putty cures, we need to have a look at our captive dwarf that is about to be pushed into the haunted waters below. I bought this STL of a captive dwarf that I 3D printed, but I realized the miner's hat kind of felt a little out of place, not very piratey. So I attempted a digital kit bash. I found a free download of a pirate gnome, removed its suitably salty hat and attached that to my dwarf. This sounds simple, but in fact took several hours as it was my first try. Praise the pirates for YouTube tutorials. The altered dwarf printed perfectly, and I could now prime both diorama and miniatures. I primed with a zenithal prime using a black primer first and then a white overspray from above. This gives a grey sort of gradient that I can use as a light map when painting. It shows me what areas should be highlighted or shaded, as if this ship is sailing under a suitably cloudy Caribbean sky. I'll describe a bit more in detail about the approach when painting with the diorama as an example, and then move more swiftly through the painting of the models. First off, I decided to not use so many paints, instead relying on mixing paints. I made a video on this recently if you want to see more of a deep dive into the thought process, linked above. But the idea is, 1, not to scare you with the use of a gazillion paints. Besides, my paint collection has gone in hiding somewhere, terrified of the potential keelhaul. Secondly, using a few paints, mixing them together creates a sense of unity. Everything in this diorama will have paints and colors in common and will therefore look more unified and coherent. I'm using a scarlet red, a muted and a vibrant yellow, a warm and a cool blue, plus black and white. As you can see, I can create quite a variety of colors by just mixing these paints. For the hull, I mixed a series of brown, from a cooler dark brown to a warmer light brown, plus a dark shadowy blue and green. And the first step is to try and replace the grayscale zenithal prime with these paints, using a dark blue and greens for the most shaded parts, working my way up to a light brown in the most highlighted areas. I blend the paint wet on the miniature, so-called wet blending. A large structure like this is a great place to start experimenting with wet blending, by the way. A link to my wet blending video is now linked above if you want to know more. I'll use this approach on everything I paint for this diorama, regardless of color, mixing a cool to warm series of paints, cool for the dark, warm for the bright, and then blend them on as the first layer, attempting to mimic the zenithal prime light map. As you can see, I did the same thing here with the sea and then the tentacles. There's no need to be super precise, it's just about getting a first layer on, a sort of base coat. But a base coat that is a bit more alive than just the one straight color. The step after that is to enhance the shadows a little bit. I mix a thin down dark blue-green as well as use a thin down straight black so that I can mix darker and lighter shades as I go. I tint the shadows both in color but also darken them where needed. After painting on a bit of paint, I rinse my brush, wipe off extreme excess of water on a tissue and go back and smudge out the edges of paint, trying to create a sort of gradient. What you would call glazing, I guess. Again, this is something I'll be doing on everything, miniatures as well, giving everything a similar shadowy tone, that dark blue-green. I realized it'd be cool to do the same thing but with a brighter blue on the tentacles. It adds vibrancy but also a sense of reflection from the blue sea below. And that led me on to doing the same on the hull, like blue reflections from the sea mirrored in the hull. This happens a lot when I paint, trying things out, seeing what it looks like. After all, one can always paint things back the way they were if the result is not great. It's a lot of fun letting the paint job dictate the rules, experimenting on the way rather than sticking to certainty, for me at least. And finally, I can highlight, and I use the opportunity to add texture and interest, like enhancing the wood grain on all the planking, adding a skin-like vibe to the tentacles, or a brighter blue reflection from the water on the hull. All highlights, but also texture, scratches, and interest. I work in steps with brighter and brighter paints, trying as well to add more yellow into the mix so that the highlights are both brighter and warmer. The miniatures get the same treatment, again using only the 5 colors as used in the diorama. The goblin will of course feature a yellow armor, as yellow is very goblin, and yellow happens to look good next to green, also very goblin. I've decided to do a rather vibrant and, well, easy to interpret diorama. Often I tend to go down a grim and dark path, but because this is going on display, I honestly don't know how, but I'm assuming in a glass case with many more creations beside it, and I therefore want to give the viewer a clear picture, even from a few feet away. So I want vibrant colors and clear blocks of color to make this piece stand out in a display case.
When in the midst of painting the little goblin, I realized I should probably start on the water effects, as they can take some time to dry, which means I should probably varnish a little bit first. I want the sort of ship to be ultra matte, sort of salt stained, and then maybe the rest of the stuff, the water and that, will be a bit glossy. I don't really want to use UV resin for the water effect. I'm going to go for probably some glossy Mod Podge and then maybe what's called some splash gel. I think for the entire diorama, as it's going on display, hopefully maybe inspiring lots of people to check out what you can do when building a diorama, is to have a mixed variety of things going on, all that are sort of possible to be done by anyone. So I want to exclude sort of UV resin that a lot of people don't like because it's, you know, toxic. That's why I sort of scratch built something, hand sculpted something using, you know, purchased miniatures, using a 3D printed miniature. And yeah, for the water effects, I'm going to stick to just regular stuff you can buy in a game store and use, regardless of sort of age and allergies and stuff like that. Time for some varnish.
After the matte varnish is dried, giving my hull a salty dry look, I added some glossy decoupage glue on the sea. This is also known as Mod Podge, but yeah, if you can't find Mod Podge in your part of the world, decoupage glue is pretty much the same thing. I leave this overnight to dry and become clear. I've now done that first layer of wet blending on both miniatures. As you can see, they complement each other quite well. The green and yellow goblin versus the turquoise dwarf sporting a lovely orange beard, as dwarves do. And I must say that that hat is working out nicely too. I then continue as I did on the hull, mixing a thin down dark green blue and start adding that to the shadows. This will not only tie the two miniatures together, but further tie them together with the entire diorama, making them all look as part of the same scene. Coherency can sometimes be one of the difficult things when working on a diorama. Making it look like one piece and not just individually painted elements is tricky, but I hope this will help. I can then start adding highlights, building up the different sections with brighter paints, adding texture and depth, layer by layer. I've come to like painting yellow. This one with a bit of brown mid-tone makes it look almost like gold. And I must say I very much enjoyed painting this goblin. Not too many fiddly bits, but still very fun and interesting. I did a bit of cheating on the goblin skin. Going for an excessively vibrant green, again thinking of making this stand out as much as possible, even from a few feet away, I added some fluorescent yellow to the mixed bright green for the final highlight. This just pushes the green into supernova territory and regardless of lighting situation should make this goblin quite eye-catching. I then used the same trick on the brightest highlights on the squig on a stick, as well as on the tentacle suction cups on the kraken.
Now that the goblin's finished, I need to paint the dwarf, but I'm going to take a break and add some more gloss Mod Podge or decoupage glue to the water, the second layer. And once I've added another layer, I'm going to grab a straw and just kind of try and shape some waves with the help of air. This can be done with an airbrush as well, but I figured this would be a bit more sort of user home friendly. Now these will of course just sort of flow out a little bit, but you get a bit more of an organic kind of feel going. And it kind of looks silly.
Painting the dwarf was similar in approach to everything previous, but I wanted to show you this skin tone thing as it stands out. Mixing my yellow with a little red and blue and white indeed creates these lovely skin tones. I can vary the three tones, a bit more red and blue in the darkest mix, a bit more yellow in the brightest mix, and I have all the skin tones I need to layer on a great sort of tanned Caucasian skin tone. Mixing differently, and we can mix any skin tone desired using only these 4 paints, of course with some added black if going for darker tones. And I'm still no expert at eyes, but after a few tries I managed to get something not excessively cross-eyed going. And slightly misplaced pupils might be in order, as the choice between a bite from a squig or to cuddle with the kraken is maybe not the easiest choice around.
And we're done. Pretty much done. The goblin is painted. The dwarf is painted. The diorama is painted, waiting for the water effects to dry. And then I could assemble it and take pretty pictures for you so you can see What a lovely diorama I've built. Only the thing is, now I need to pack this somehow so that I can take it with me to SoFlatt in London without everything just falling to pieces. So I'm not actually going to glue the miniatures on the diorama. I'm going to transport this piece like this and these separately, and then hopefully find some time in the UK to assemble the diorama into a completed piece. I still kind of want to show you what things look like. So I'm going to try and sort of put things together. Things might look a little bit crooked, and but we need that epic picture in the end, don't we? Just have to wait for the water effects.
I added some splash gel to the water, giving it a bit more of a ripple, removed the tape, and we are as close to done as we get. Hopefully this piece survives the hands of curious airport security personnel. Hopefully I won't forget it on the seat on a train, and hopefully it makes its way to SoFlatt to avoid the merciless demise of my paint collection. Fun was had building and painting this. I enjoyed trying to be restrictive and rather colourful, as well as trying to build something that isn't too complex, and thus I hope it might inspire. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you for watching. As always, a special thank you to my patrons that make the creation of these videos possible. If you would like to support me and my work with these videos, there are many ways to do so. Like and subscribe to the channel, consider becoming a patron, give a super comment here on YouTube, or have a look through the merch on my website. Oh, and don't forget to tell your friends about the channel, and please let me know what you think of the diorama in the comment section below. I'm already looking forward to starting up the next video, and I hope I'll see you then. Bye.